Good morning, campers, and welcome to Radio Camp Half-Blood, a Percy Jackson read-along podcast. I'm B.
And I'm Zach.
And this week we read Chapter 15 of The Last Olympian, Chiron Throws a Party.
Hey, B, you know we should be throwing a party today? You know why?
Why?
It's our 2-year anniversary!
Oh, wow, I didn't even notice it was the same day.
Look at that, B. Super crazy.
Wow, 2 years already. What perfect timing.
B, what were you doing 2 years ago?
I was in a different apartment. I didn't know a lot of the people that I know now. I didn't know you very well. There was a lot of things. I hadn't read Percy Jackson. I hadn't seen the musical. I hadn't met a lot of the cool people who listen to the podcast. There's so many things that are different now.
Yeah, for me, it's the exact same thing. I didn't know you that well. Actually, I take that back. I didn't know you, B. I listened to Unfortunate Associates, so I guess I knew you, but, like, I didn't know you at the same time.
I didn't know you, and that's creepy. No, I'm joking. You were a guest that a couple times, actually, on Unfortunate Associates. So I knew of you, but we were definitely not as close as we are now.
I had not gone to New York City twice. I had not hung out with a bunch of people.
That's true. You didn't visit my house twice. Yeah. I didn't make you steak yet. So many friendship milestones.
I didn't know that I was going to have, adult apple beverage with your friend Sarah. And then we talked all about Halloween Town. It's a crazy, crazy, crazy week in my life, as well as the whole anniversary. It's crazy. Thank you guys so much for listening to our second anniversary episode. And yeah, I guess it's appropriate because we're having a party. It's about to be a party in the USA, right, B?
Yeah, I just, I hope that, centaurs don't come barging into my home. That'd be pretty bad.
B, I gotta make a phone call really quickly. Okay, I gotta cancel this centaur partygram. Oh no, it's too late.
I hear the hooves. It's too late.
It's too late.
The thundering stampede, and then I die like Mufasa.
What is the ultimate party song?
I mean, obviously, "Give Me Everything" by Pitbull.
Oh no.
That's the ultimate party song. My friends and I were obsessed with that song senior year of high school. We thought it was the funniest song in the world. It sounds like a parody of what a party song would be, and that's why I love it. It's just so ridiculous. I don't know. I kind of love it.
For me, it's, I think, Rhythm of the Night. I can't remember the name of the artist right now, but it's so over the top.
That slaps. We could make a playlist.
Oh no, we're gonna make a friend playlist? Oh man, it's all downhill from here.
By the way, DeBarge did Rhythm of the Night. That one also slaps, by the way.
B, speaking of the claps, what did you think of this chapter?
It's funny because I don't think when I read the title, I immediately guessed the whole pony party situation, but I think last chapter you kind of gave me a bigger hint than you usually do, where you're like, what parties have happened? Perhaps we have met them before. And so, like, I kind of knew that Chiron was going to show up. And then even in the title, it says Chiron throws a party. So, like, he's going to show up, and then obviously his centaur family.
His posse is going to come?
Yeah, it just took a little time, I guess, to wrangle them, because they're, like, I don't know, really disorganized and out of their mind, which kind of makes sense. Not a ton happens here. I guess we sort of just, like, reckon with a lot of the other stuff that's been happening, like, interpersonally with Percy and with Annabeth, and there's maybe some furthering of this, like, it sort of just feels like this endless battle. Like, I guess it's been different battles, but, like, we just get, like, a little bit of respite in between each of these battles with Kronos, and then we're just kind of right back into it. That's kind of been the pattern for, like, the past few chapters now, so it's kind of, like, blending together a little bit in my head.
I think it's still very typical, like, Rick Riordan formula, where you have a fight scene, and then there's a lull period, and then a fight scene, but here it's, like, almost every other chapter is a fight scene, then a lull, fight scene, then a lull, fight scene, then a lull.
Yeah, and, like, the settings change a little bit, because obviously Manhattan is still a pretty big place, but it's sort of like
they find like Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, they mentioned Rockefeller Center. They mentioned like sort of there's like name checks of different New York locations, and if you've been to New York, it's sort of like meant to evoke like memories of that place, which I mean that's a very Rick Riordan thing to do, of like, oh, let's use these landmarks as like an interesting backdrop to this like urban fantasy kind of thing. It's just funny though, because it's getting like very specific, because it's not just like, oh, we're in New York City and we're like having a battle. It's like, we're in New York City and we're having a battle on the which bridge did they have the battle on again? Was it the Williamsburg Bridge?
Williamsburg Bridge. They haven't gotten like the Brooklyn Bridge yet.
Yeah, I mean, but it's kind of just it doesn't feel all that different. The battles that keep happening, they're like, okay, they keep getting pushed back, their forces are dwindling, they're tired. Like, I didn't find this chapter particularly different from the past two we've read, really.
I think it says a lot about Rick Riordan. Like, he obviously loves New York City because they're hitting all these landmarks. I'm thinking about this from like if we flipped it, like what if this was Los Angeles? Like thinking about it, like Los Angeles is pretty spread out.
It would be very
so
different,
it'd be almost
I think.
even more
Yeah.
hopeless. Oh no, there'd be a part where they go to like, oh my god, we're at the Chinese theater. Now we're on Hollywood Boulevard, farther
we're
up.
at the Hollywood sign. We're at all of that kind of stuff.
And then obviously they'd have to take like a 45-minute car ride to get to Disneyland, and then maybe the beach.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like doesn't quite work the same way, I guess, because like New York is just a bit more like compact, especially Manhattan.
Here's the thing though, B, is like if you look at New York and then compare it to Los Angeles, New York is a grid pattern, like all the places just are in grids, everything makes sense. In Los Angeles, like we're just gonna put anything where it just
like
fits.
You go up the hills. No, it's a little different. It's a bit of a different format.
And I like it set in New York like this because for me I can visualize all this stuff, especially finally going to New York twice. I can actually kind of visualize what New York looks like and how epic of scale this is probably.
You can picture the Chrysler Building.
Okay, B, next time I go, you should blindfold me, spin me around a couple of times, and see which one I get correct.
Yeah, I think third time was the charm you finally...
B, third time we're going to go on the Empire State Building. I'm calling it. I think that's where I'm going to go, and I'm going to jump off, and hopefully a Pegasus will pick me up.
I've never been in the Empire State Building. I've seen it a bunch of times, but I've never actually gone in it. I haven't done any of that touristy stuff. I've never been in the Statue of Liberty either.
Well, B, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a portable recorder. We're going to go talk to like a doorman and be like, hey, can we get into the 600th floor? No, you can't. Right this way.
Yeah, and then they'll escort you away. And that man was Rick Riordan.
But I would love if Rick Riordan gave me a personal tour of the Empire State Building.
That would actually be a great idea, honestly, is for him to like have a specific tour that he hosts of like different areas in New York that are significant to the plot of Percy Jackson. That'd be really fun, honestly.
What is he, like Bill Nye the Science Guy?
I don't know. Well,
I guess he gives off that energy.
Unlike Bill Nye the Science Guy, only he's like Rick the history. Let's not rhyme that. Let's back away from the rhyme.
I was thinking of I think we have run the same brain here, and I'm like, wait a second, he's neither of those. Rick the history Richard? No, that doesn't make sense.
Let's just back off a little bit from that rhyme scheme.
B, what you're telling me is it's Rick the personal detective. Oh, he's a detective. He digs up the past. There you go.
I would like a spin-off of that, actually, of just like Rick Riordan solving different history mysteries.
What is this, Murder, She Wrote? Is he like going from place to place?
I was more thinking something like Wishbone, but yeah.
Oh man, but you know what's weird about this chapter, B, is that everything we talked about last chapter and a couple chapters ago are finally coming to light from the people. It's like, wait a second, are we like 4 steps ahead? I didn't know that we had future vision because they talk about how Percy finally kind of talks to Anna about like what happens if you're going to see Luke, as well as kind of the stuff that Thalia and Percy talked about.
I do kind of find this hilarious because we were talking just last episode about how he hasn't talked to Annabeth about all these things, and it ends up not really mattering because she knows everything. Like, this is very hilarious where he's just like, well, you know, the thing I had, the vision, I saw you and Luke, and she's like, yeah, I know. And then he's like, well, you know what Talia is saying about how you're not going to be able to, and she's like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to fight Luke, I understand. Like, he just keeps getting interrupted by her where she's like, yeah, I know all these things. So it's kind of not as big of a deal as you would think it is.
I think because she's kind of come to terms with her own flaws, because she even talks about like, yeah, I remember the Sea of Monsters, I kind of found out what my fatal flaw is, and all these are pretty much playing into my fatal flaw, and it's kind of hard to like, you know, how can I help myself even though I know my own fatal flaws, which is actually very, very unique in the terms of like a hero character. Like, they know what their flaws are and they don't know how to like combat them because they know it's like that is their flaw.
That's kind of like the worst in a way, where she knows what her flaw is, but she kind of is like powerless to stop it, which I guess is sort of like the definition of like this kind of like ancient Greek mythology flaw where it's like you, even if you're aware of what your downfall will be, it's sort of like written in the stars that it'll be that way anyway. There's kind of no avoiding it.
Well, yes, and it's a lot like, you have people that have like very self-destructive behaviors, and sometimes they know they have self-destructive behaviors, but they dye their hair a different color anyways, and they do all that crazy, they send that text they shouldn't have, they do all those crazy things. And that's a very realistic thing for a person, even because human nature is just so destructive at times where something is bad for you, but you do it anyways. Like, people still smoke cigarettes, even though time and time again, smoking will kill you.
Yeah, it's sort of like the draw of this self-destructive impulse that I guess everybody seems to have. I mean, Percy has his own self-destructive impulse in a way where he's like loyal to a fault. It's like the same idea.
Well, yeah, it's like me, B. I have a self-destructive tendency to eat blocks of cheese. Do I do it? Yes.
I think we have
Will it
the
kill
same
me? Probably.
self-destructive tendency.
Oh, man. I don't even know what my self-destructive tendency would be. Maybe, like, me being organized for episodes for podcasts and just, like, scheduling things. That might be my self-destructive tendency.
Is that self-destructive? I mean, that's not so bad. Could be worse.
Well, what's yours?
I think the blocks... You were onto something with the blocks of cheese.
Okay, so we're going to go back to the block of cheese. V is going to be, like, by the end of, like, we go to the Willie Williams and the cheese factory. Do we end up becoming blocks of cheese because we've eaten so much cheese?
Yeah, like, and then the Oompa Loompas, like, go on, and then they sing a little moralistic song about how I made a mistake.
For some reason, imagine, like, fizzy lifting drink. It's like, you have to burp, B. You have to burp. I'm too constipated to burp.
God, Jesus.
Oh, no.
Anyway, I found their conversation about Fatal Flaws really interesting because Annabeth was pretty resigned to the whole thing and also at the same time was kind of like proving Percy's point where she was like, well, yeah, I see what you're saying, but also you have to understand why I need to have hope in Luke anyway. And it's kind of like she's talking out of both sides of her mouth a little bit, where at the same time she like understands that's like probably a destructive impulse and not maybe the best way to think about things. And also she's like, okay, but I have to do this.
Well, that's the important thing about a myth, isn't it? Like, you need hope or you can give up hope. And it shows the idea of like how there's no such thing as a good person. There's no such thing as a bad person. It's very serious, unfortunate events in the sense of how everyone's just in like a gray neutral area.
Yeah, I mean, especially with, I think Annabeth is invested in believing in the morally gray because she doesn't want to believe that Luke is irredeemable. And there's also even like, of course, Percy has to admit this thing that he heard about Ethan, which I guess he, like, in this conversation, he feels almost, like, so guilty and sad about what they're talking about that that's probably why he feels the need to bring it up. Like, well, you know, Ethan said it might be that Luke is still in there and that he's gonna fight against it and, you know, he's gonna overcome Kronos in some way, and even though that's like a very slim chance of hope, that's like kind of just enough for Annabeth to hold on to it.
Well, hope is such a dangerous weapon. Like, we literally have it like in
jar,
physical incarnate with the
that won't leave him.
Well, hope is such a scary thing because hope can do two things. Like, you can like wish like something, like say like a pet or something is like ill and you want it to pull through. Like, hope is a dangerous weapon because like it gives you this false
understanding of reality. Yeah,
like, oh my god, he's gonna get okay, we're gonna go on walks again. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way, and
sometimes it doesn't work out. Yeah, that's why I think it's complicated because Percy's motivations are complicated, where like he both doesn't want her to get her hopes up because it's like not strategically like advantageous for her to like be focused on Luke and maybe like, oh well, maybe he'll be better, and like that's like not really where she should be focusing right now. And also it's just kind of like not realistic necessarily. It might not even be true. So like, why would he want to, in a way that would hurt her to know that, to even like think that Luke is going to be okay? Because like maybe he's not. And then as we find out later in this chapter, there's even more at stake with Luke now that he has been like subsumed by Kronos or whatever, where it's like his mortal body is not long for this world, basically.
It is about to pass its expiration date. It's going to be like a reactor in Chernobyl. It's about to go critical. Even like when it comes to the idea of hope and it comes to the idea of Percy Jackson telling her, I think it's more important that he did tell her, because we get back to the idea of like the romance stuff. Like if they told him, it would be easier. But even here, it's like you have to kill your darling sometimes. It's like it's easier to just tell her and kind of figure out what's going to go happen. Because I like that the reaction that she gives isn't the reaction like that we're so used to. It's like her freaking out like in the Battle of the Labyrinth.
Yeah, I thought she'd be pretty defensive, but it's sort of like I guess it makes sense because she is supposed to be wise, so she's kind of expressing that here. She's not dumb, right? She's pretty perceptive. So I think that that's kind of what this whole scene is about with her talking to Percy, where it's like, yeah, I know all these things you guys think about me. I'm not oblivious, sort of. It's very complicated because she's both wise and also has this impulse to go against her better instincts. So it's like both of those things are at odds.
Annabeth is a very wise and capable character, but her judgment gets clouded the second Luke enters frame, no matter what happens.
Yeah. It's kind of like, in a way that makes sense though, because she would be maybe too overpowered as a character if she didn't have like some sort of flaw in her logic sometimes, because for the most part she's like very logical and very good at planning and strategizing. So I think if she didn't have like that one thing that distracted her and made her make bad decisions against her better judgment, then she'd be kind of like too powerful of a tool for them in battle. Like it makes sense that she would have some sort of flaw, you know?
Everything has to have a flaw. Superman has a flaw. He's got kryptonite. Before that, he did it, and the reason why they actually made kryptonite was for the radio serials, because Superman was too powerful, so they needed something to
It would be boring.
It would be boring. Yeah, you needed something.
Yeah, like if Annabeth was always swooping in and being like, oh, well, Percy, you should do this, that, and the other thing, and then everything turned out fine, there would be like no dramatic tension. So like I get why she needs to have this investment in Luke. It is still super frustrating though, especially because I like know that she knows it. I know that she understands that it's like disadvantageous to like believe in him still or to like prioritize him, but she can't help it.
But that's what makes it so compelling, is like she knows it, but she still has that self-destructive tendency, which for me is such a good story element, because she knows her flaws, the audience knows her flaws, Percy knows her flaws, but nothing's getting done. It's like so interesting. Like obviously something's going to happen. She has to make that choice. And you can infer it by any way, stretch or form, but you know she's eventually going to have to face down Luke, because guess what? It almost happens in this chapter when like Luke's forces come and he's just about to like fight them, and that's when the pony party comes in, and this is where the real party begins, the PRT.
Yeah, so this is kind of like a funny contrast, honestly. There's a lot of like weird stuff going on where there's this like heavy emotional conversation between Annabeth and Percy, and then there's this like very intense feeling of like, oh, we're going to fail. There just is no strategic way we could win against these people. And just when like they're pretty much like they're out of resources, they're out of energy, they're out of manpower, they're out of all of these things, that's when the pony party comes, and not only does that like relieve some of the tension of this battle sequence, but it's also like hilarious because they're like these centaurs dressed up in like goofy novel t-shirts and stuff.
B, I know what their theme song is now. I figured it out.
Oh, what's their theme song?
It's the Jellyfish Jam from SpongeBob.
Oh yeah, that's definitely they definitely bring the energy of the Jellyfish Jam for sure, where they're just like out of nowhere. Like how many did they say? 500? Something like that?
There's like 500. It's like Lord of the Rings. Like when all hope is lost, all of a sudden
you're like, oh, all of a sudden on the horizon there's some Ents or whatever. Like that, just when you think that hope is lost, there's like new reinforcements. And then this also creates a precedent where we know that I guess reinforcements can go through the magical barriers that Chronos set up, because like apparently those are more for humans to like stop humans from getting in the way of Chronos. It doesn't really seem to like hold back magical creatures and people as much.
Well, it makes sense because there's the power of Cronus is in his chariot. Just imagine if humans were around, like he'd be stuck in traffic. Come on, everybody, move. Time is money.
Well, also, I think they already mentioned something about how they wouldn't be able to put like all the demigods to sleep because that would take too much power from God, what's his name?
Morpheus.
Yeah, Morpheus, right? Because I have to just think Matrix, and then I remember. Because yeah, Morpheus would like use all of his power or whatever if he made everybody fall asleep. So it kind of makes sense that like it wouldn't, you know, be so powerful that like every magical being wouldn't be able to like get into Manhattan.
I think it's so interesting that we have Chiron show up, and you know, obviously he's about to fight his dad, but everyone starts to like retreat a little bit, so they actually have some breathing room, and all the centaurs are like partying it out, and it would make for an epic confrontation. Like when it comes to big battle scenes, I love those moments where you just have like you pump your fist up in the air. It reminds me a lot of B, you've seen the first Spider-Man, right?
A while ago. The one with Tobey Maguire?
Yeah, the one with Tobey Maguire, our favorite Spider-Man. The part where like the Green Goblin's flying on the bridge and Spider-Man's like hurt, and all of a sudden like someone throws like a can at the Green Goblin, like, hey,
Yeah.
hey, Ooze, if you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
Oh god, that's so cheesy. That sure was right post 9/11 New York, huh? That really was exactly the vibe that they were bringing.
Well, the better one is like the part in Spider-Man 2 when Doc Ock's on the subway. It's like, if you have to go through me, and me, and me, and all of a sudden Doc Ock just spreads them all apart to Spider-Man. It's great.
It's a similar energy for sure. In this case, though, all the actual human New Yorkers are, taking a little nap. So it's instead this like giant party is like really the only word for it of a bunch of centaurs from like I guess all over the country is what Chiron says.
All over the United States. You have Hawaii, New Mexico, California, South Florida.
Yeah, Rhode Island they mentioned, Florida. Yeah, it's there's a lot of centaurs from all over the place. It's kind of interesting though, is like trying to think like, oh, why did only some of them respond? I guess the excuse is that Chiron says that they're like difficult to organize and that's why it took so long to get there, is like they're just so easily distracted that it's hard to like hurt them.
Well, I mean, all you need to do is give them a case of root beer and some jellyfish jams and they'll go anywhere. Just say it's a spring break blowout party.
Yeah, it kind of does seem like they're very much motivated in the same way that like a Little League team would be, where it's like, just follow the pizza and the root beer and then they'll just go wherever you want.
Yum, yum. We have Chuck E. Cheese. Yum, yum. We also got those birthday cakes, the cheap ones. Yum, yum. But there's so much Chad energy here that I'm surprised the barrier wasn't broken by the amount of Chad dude bro energy, and I'm a little sad about that.
Yeah, no, I guess it still exists. It's just they were able to get through it, is what Chiron says. But again, that establishes that more backup can get through that barrier. That's what Percy says. So, like, who knows what that is going to entail later on if, like, some other group of people appear in sort of a Deus Ex Machina kind of way, though I can't think of anybody off the top of my head other than, I guess, Clarice?
That's about it, maybe. Who knows? But it's like, is it going to be like the Avengers Endgame, where like all the portals open up and you have every hero from the Marvel Cinematic Universe pop out? Chris Evans just whispers, assemble, and everyone just freaks out. Like, I remember being in theaters and people losing their minds. Yeah,
this definitely feels like all the stops are being pulled out for the last book, where it's like, oh, I remember you and you and you, and then he was there, and it's like it's all like these old cast of characters
and
that
Scarecrow
keep, like,
was
making
there.
an appearance. Yeah, it's very like the end of The Wizard of Oz, where it's just like every possible minor character you ever met in the series is like appear. Even like Linnaeus is there. Like literally every character is making a little cameo in this book,
which I love. I like that everything comes full circle, because a lot of the elements of this book are pulled from the very first book. Like a lot of, like, we go to like Auntie M's Gardenum Emporium. They talk about all this.
Right, exactly. There's a lot of full circle stuff like that.
For me, like, the parts that get me really emotional when I read Harry Potter is actually the last book, when Harry's like talking about, oh, in my first year, in my third year, I did this and this. And I'm like, oh my God, I've read all these books. I'm getting kind of sad, because it's like, those seem like, minutes ago, but they're years. I think what Rick Riordan does here is really fun in that sense of, like, you get to reminisce, but it isn't like it rubs you in the face with it almost, where it's like fake nostalgia.
I think that's what people want from the last book in a series, though, for the most part, especially this like style of like YA action adventure. Like you want to see all of your old favorites, like they make a quick appearance and like come to the rescue of the main character. Like that's kind of the function of a book like this.
Well, there's good ways to do it and there's bad ways. I think this is a really good way. And then you watch something like The Rise of Skywalker or just any Star Wars movie recently, and it's like, you remember this element? That's a line pulled right from here.
Right. It could just be very like superficial, like, and this guy, he's here for a second. Like it needs to actually be written in a way that kind of makes sense. It can't just be like, this guy's here.
Okay, there's a part in The Rise of Skywalker that's literally like that, where they cut to a person really quickly. And he's a guy that has been in the first 3 Star Wars movies, named Wedge Antilles, and they just put him in The Rise of Skywalker just for a quick cameo when he says a line, and everyone's like, oh, that's Wedge Antilles! And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess they got him when he was, cooking, and they put him in front of a green screen, and Yeah, it's not fun. I love it when like they actually have like a purpose, and this is like a purpose. We see the party ponies. They bring up the sea of monsters. They bring up things from the Titan's curse, and then they even bring up like smaller things. And obviously, we get Percy's mom and we get Paul, which those scenes are all great, but we don't get those yet because we kind of get the Cronus's forces have been pushed back, and everyone's kind of like talking and chatting, and all of a sudden Percy kind of like disassociates for a couple seconds.
Yeah, so this is weird, right? Because we didn't have a dream sequence in this and we didn't have a vision. Instead, we have like another weird narrative tool that's like essentially like a dream sequence or vision. It's very similar. Like, yeah, narratively speaking, I guess he's like astral projecting is the best way I could describe it.
He's a spooky force ghost right now.
Yeah, just Mr. D just like makes him appear at this weird hillbilly party, I guess.
Oh, for like Joe Bob, Billy Bob. Oh, I love it. I love that he's like, because they set it up.
What is his name again? The hillbilly is having a birthday.
B, the person's name is Bobby Earl. How could you forget Bobby Earl's birthday party, B?
I like how the explanation for why that party is still happening is that Bobby Earl and his friends are like so slow on the uptake that they're like not realizing that the apocalypse is impending. Like that's pretty relatable, honestly.
Well, I like there's a good setup and payoff about this. The setup is that Chiron kind of gives like a throwaway line about the first person to fall and they got tired was Dionysus, and you kind of forget about it. And then they bring up Dionysus again while he's literally playing a perfect game of Pac-Man, and I was getting some Ernest Cline vibes to this.
Yeah, a little bit. I just thought that was very funny, like the contrast of him cursing in ancient Greek and then playing Pac-Man and being like Blinky. Like it's a great contrast.
When I was looking at it and he talked about like Rick Riordan did his research, I'm guessing he likes Pac-Man because he talked about like what level he's on. And he's talking about the perfect game of Pac-Man.
Yeah, the Ernest Cline did jump out a little bit there. I didn't even think of that, but you're right.
He's about to get to the kill screen. For everyone that doesn't know, if you get to about, I think, level 256 or 57, the screen kind of glitches out, and that's the last level of Pac-Man. That's where you get your perfect score.
I would have never been able to get that far. I don't think I've ever played a successful, like, 10 consecutive games of Pac-Man.
Well, that's kind of the point, P, is like, when you get there, no one, even the game developers, knew people would get that far. That's why, like, you've run out of memory.
That's why it doesn't even have an ending.
Yeah, it doesn't have an ending. But it's fun because you have this little situation where it's a party and you see Dionysus, but they bring up a very interesting god mechanic, whereas Dionysus technically is still in the Appalachian Mountains, probably hanging out with Bigfoot.
Yeah, he's just like crushed under something, like, I guess, gaining energy. It's like,
no, he got his chariot got hit and he kind of like fell down. So he's kind of like under like 10 tons of rubble right now, and he's in a mine shaft, but his mind is in a different place. That's why it explains why he can go to different places so quickly.
Your concern is touching. I did crash land very painfully. In fact, part of me is still buried under 100 feet of rubble in an abandoned coal mine. It will be several more hours before I have enough strength to mend. But in the meantime, part of my consciousness is here. So, like, the logic is because he's the god of parties, any time where a party is happening, a little bit of him can exist there too. It's like a very interesting mechanic. In some ways I'm kind of disappointed it was introduced so late in the series because I'd be fascinated to like see other examples of this, but it's sort of like, I guess the fun reveal of it existing is the reason why it's not until the last book.
You know, I'm sure the biggest party he goes to is probably like a bar mitzvah. He's probably like, these are the best.
Me and Sarah were just talking about how she's never been to a communion and I've never been to a bat mitzvah, but the thing that unites those two is a tray of baked ziti. That's the overlap is for some reason there's a tray of baked ziti at both of those.
I always think about like when it comes to like parties, like I'm trying to think of like the best party that I ever went to. Oh, I know, B. My favorite party that I ever went to was my friend Shelby's bachelor party, and we went to the Magic Castle. We had some adult beverages, and I remember half the night, and all I just remember is magic and booze.
That's pretty good. I feel like my favorite parties have been ones that I've thrown myself that had a lot of food, and then I went to sleep.
But I like this conversation so much with Dionysus because he kind of pretty much sums up all the gods need demigods, and the demigods need the gods, but also that demigods and gods need each other, but also gods care about each other, and they also care about their kids.
I don't know. Dionysus has a habit of doing this where he'll just like dump all of this like information about something. You'll be like, huh, what, huh? And then like he'll just sort of like snap his fingers and before you have a chance to really ask what the frick is going on, it's already too late. So like, first of all, Percy is yeeted into this like random party in the middle of nowhere. And then while Dionysus is half distracted playing Pac-Man, he's describing all these different like weird mythological lore things. He's like, okay, well, first of all, if Olympus is destroyed, then like society and humanity as we know it will be destroyed because anything that like was inspired by ancient Greece and is connected to ancient Greece will disappear, which means going as like early as like, you know, poetry and mathematics and art and philosophy and things like that, all the way up to video games because it's like this sort of like endless I guess chain reaction of inspiration of like if this didn't happen then this wouldn't exist and that kind of thing. So like modern civilization would just collapse.
It's the butterfly effect.
Yeah, basically.
My favorite part though about this bee is like as he's explaining all this stuff, he's getting Percy's name wrong and wronger and the wrongest.
I know, he's definitely doing it intentionally. Like, after a while, I was like, come on, dude, this is really taking me out of the scene a little bit.
Well, that's what makes it funny. And then he's talking about Annabeth and he calls her Annie. And I thought that was like, oh, he does this to everybody.
Yeah, like, okay, at least that sort of works as a shortening of her name, but to call him Pierre is like, that's harder to remember.
Oh, there was Pierre, there was Pablo, there was Pjorgen.
No, they're all wrong. They're all really wrong.
But we get like the most tender moment be about this, and that is like while he's explaining all this stuff and losing terribly at Pac-Man because he's getting beaten by Inky, Blinky, Pinky, and Clyde, is that he's like, oh, by the way, is Pollock still alive? And Percy's like, yeah, I guess so. And he kind of like, this is where you see some humanity in the gods because he's worried about his son because he lost his other one already.
Yeah, I like how Percy both answers him and is like a little bit dumbfounded, like, wait a second, you actually care about your son, because you kind of don't seem to care about anything. Dionysus is a complicated character, because sometimes he seems to be empathetic, but I guess he's just, like, jaded, he's, like, existed for a long time, he's seen a lot, and then other times, he's, like, sincere. It's like, weird. It's hard to know when he's gonna be sincere. It's, like, weird that he still has this, like, persona that he puts up where he doesn't care about anything. I don't know if that exists so he doesn't, like, get hurt. I think it kind of is implied that that's why he does that.
Well, I like Dionysus because he's a very complicated character in that way. Like, he's supposed to be this big jerk, but you see cracks in his armor a little bit here, where you can sympathize with him. You can understand, like, out of all the gods, he's the one that's probably the most down-to-earth because he's the party god, which is, if you boil it down, he's a very cordial person.
Right, I mean, he's also just been through a lot, like many of the Greek gods have, where they've seen horrible things happen, so it's kind of, like, in his interest to not be as invested, or at least pretend like he's not as invested.
Well, B, there's something very important about Dionysus that takes him out of all the other gods, B. You know what that is? Before he was a god, he was a demigod.
That's true. I didn't really think of that. Because he has his own weird specific hang-ups about demigods, and then he even says in this, like, oh, well, you know, I'll never admit that I said this, but the gods do need heroes. So he has, like, this very complicated relationship to heroes, to demigods, and the role that they serve within, like, this whole, like, ecosystem of gods and everything.
Yeah, and like I said, he's a very complicated person, but also, even in this conversation, you're getting so much information about him that he's like, don't tell Zeus or anybody that I said this, because I'm guessing due to ancient law, they can't admit to, like, I guess maybe that's like their fatal flaw. Like they're so prideful they don't want to admit that they need help.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I think that Dionysus probably just acts like a jerk because if he acts that way, then he doesn't have to, like, get hurt. You know what I mean? If he actually, like, gets invested and cares and whatever. Like, even, like, the way that he mispronounces Percy's name, I don't think that that's even real. Like, obviously he remembers his name. He's, like, affecting an air of not caring because that, like, makes him feel, like, distance from all of these, like, negative things.
Well, speaking of negative things, B, he gives the most negative news ever, and that is that Luke's body is going critical and that Kronos will be coming to full form in tomorrow.
Yeah, in addition to the bomb that he drops about how society might crumble as we know it if Olympus is destroyed. So he says to Percy, "Oh, you got to focus on that. Let us take care of the other Titan and whatever else." But then he's like, "Oh, by the way, this isn't even his final form, like that freaking meme or whatever."
This isn't even my final form.
Their interaction's very funny because he keeps saying things where Percy's like, "Yeah, I kind of knew that," but he's like, "No, you don't understand." Like he's gonna ascend to be a god, or ascend to be a Titan, and then in the process Luke will be destroyed and Kronos will be so powerful that if you just look at him you'll die, basically.
And also all the Titans will have like a rallying cry. They're not even trying right now. Once he becomes his true form, they will start fighting and murder all of you. Like you will all turn into like pillars of salt. You will like really, really like not have a good time. You will lose by a long shot. So you only have until tomorrow. Conveniently, B, that's when Typhus is coming into town. And also, I'm going to take a guess, B, this is when Percy turns 16. Just a wild guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap of some pretty significant moments happening all at the same time.
Oh no, and prom is the next day. Oh no.
Yeah. And I'm just trying to be a teen. Yeah, so I just feel like they just keep piling on things we have to worry about, because now we're worried about, okay, maybe Luke is fighting back against being possessed by Kronos, but that's the stakes are raised on that because now we know that basically he's gonna die, then Kronos is gonna become this like untouchable being that you can't even look at. There's the countdown of when Typhus is going to like make his way to New York. There's the fact that they're under siege at Mount Olympus, and if that gets destroyed, then all of society gets destroyed. Like there's a lot of stakes, basically.
It's just bad to worse to bad to disastrous any moment.
Yeah, I mean,
now.
we've talked about this. Like, this whole book basically has been just like a real like negative laundry list of just like, I feel like every single chapter either something bad happens or Percy has a vision or some sort of thing that makes him learn about another negative thing that's happening, either to his loved ones or to himself, or that's inevitable in a couple days. Like, it's not looking great. I feel like things are mostly going to work out because, that's kind of the way that Percy Jackson has worked as like a formula. Even if maybe a character dies or something like that, for the most part, I think that they're going to be triumphant. It's still very stressful because it's just sort of like there's never really any triumph in this book. Like, even like any minor success that they have against Kronos, it's always with the caveat of like, oh, well, this is temporary, or oh, they're just going to come back soon, or they're going to overtake us. There's only so much we can fight against them. Like, it doesn't look great.
Well, B, when you look at this book, I've been thinking a lot about like all that is happening right now is deliberate because it's just Rick Riordan wants those kids to keep flipping those pages. Like, this is a book that probably, like, if you sat down and read it, you probably, like, blur through it because every time something bad happens, you just keep wanting to turn the page of it. And this is, I call the epitome of, like, what a page turner is.
Yeah, ideally hoping that things get better. Like, there's always, like, a sliver of hope, and I guess in some ways that's very metaphorically resonant with the whole Pandora's jar thing, where obviously the reader needs a little bit of hope, like, okay, probably things are going to work out, but in the meantime, we just keep getting bad news, and it does sort of propel you to want to read ahead, which is obviously difficult for the format of our show, but it's like, oh my god, can we just catch a break, please? Just one break.
Sorry, B, there's no breaks. You gotta punch in, punch out. Breaks are optional now.
And it's like, even the positive stuff, like whatever, the Chiron brings the pony party or whatever, that's like such a small, like, break from everything that's happening. Because that's like only putting off the inevitable of all this other horrible stuff.
Yeah, it's like trying to put a Band-Aid on like a nuclear reactor about to go critical. Like, you can't do much.
Yeah, it's like, there's only so much you can do before you're like, well, this doesn't look great, For
me, I love disaster movies. I love watching when things are crumbling down, but the most important thing when it comes to a disaster movie, if you watch like The Great Inferno, The Poseidon Adventures, you watch 2012, a schlocky movie that I love, even Independence Day, is that even when all hope is lost, there's still a sliver of hope, and we kind of see that here a little bit where Percy Jackson gets pulled back to reality, and the first thing that he sees is that he notices Paul Blowfish's Prius. Oh no.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you see it and he goes to it and he realizes that Percy's mom and Paul are sleeping in the car, meaning that his mom was also affected.
Right, so she's was on her way, like, trying to help him somehow. And then this is confusing, right? Because he's looking in the car, and then he sees Pandora's jar and is like, wait a second, that was left in the hotel. Why is that here?
For a boy that has a pen that if you throw it and comes right back to your pocket, it's like, wait a second, this makes no sense.
Right, yeah, you'd think his object permanence would, like, factor in magical objects. Like, yeah, you obviously can't just, like, put Pandora's box in a safe in a hotel and hope that it's not going to follow you. Like, that is kind of silly. Of course, like, when he does it, I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. But the more you think about it, you're like, oh, right, yeah, the way the mythology works, it probably wouldn't just, like, chill, would it?
No, because it's always when he feels the most hopeless, it's going to show up to tempt him. It's like the devil, like, hey, you want to get the solid gold fiddle? All you got to do is play me in a fiddle match. But even here, I love, like, Percy Jackson's kind of freaking out in a different way. He's trying to get his parents off the road. Like, if we'll put it in neutral and we'll hide them somewhere just so they're not in danger. But, like, it's not a selfish thing, but it's funny. It's like he thinks about his parents, but yet there's millions of parents all around New York City that are being affected.
Right, like, oh, this is what snaps you out of it? Like, yeah, you're surrounded by a bunch of sleeping New Yorkers, and, like, there's fires raging on in the distance. Like, he has, like, self-reflected about that, but, like, of course your parents are also in danger because they live here.
Yes. And it's more important that you have that way, which, you know, it does speak a lot because, again, it's like Percy Jackson's super powered, but then he puts into perspective that, oh, wait, my mom could die, or I guess Paul could die, or anyone could die. And also we have Pandora's jar, which if he opens it up, they might give him a chance to live because this is the Promethean curse, which I love. Like, you have more temptation, you get more danger, you get more thrills and chills. And you know what else happens, B? You know what you hear? He looks up. Oh no, hey, look, there's a helicopter. Wait a second. Oh no, there's a helicopter.
Yeah, so I guess we knew about this, right? Because we know when Rachel is like, we gotta get out of here, Percy's in danger, and then her dad's like a real jerk about it, and she can't really explain what's going on, but she's like, no, I need to figure this out for myself. Yeah, all the humans are falling asleep because of Morpheus, so being unaware of that, Rachel is either she's piloting it or someone else, she's her pilot or whatever.
No, but she would not be oh no.
Yeah, I'm guessing a child isn't piloting it by herself, right?
I'm guessing the helicopter pilot fell asleep and she's like doesn't know how to figure it out, but she's trying to keep that thing like level at least before it crashes into a building. But you know what the scariest thing about this is like not only is it like just one helicopter, but you have to remember JFK and LaGuardia are like in New York City. What about all those, you know, airplanes that are flying in the air that probably won't get redirected?
Yeah, I didn't really think about that, especially because, like, obviously New York City, there's a lot of, like, concern for, like, airline incidents and things like that. Do they just, like, fall out of the sky? Like, how did that...
No, I'm guessing, okay, before we get really dark and sinister, we're not going to get into this past. I'm going to say right now, headcanon, they're being redirected away.
Yeah, I hope so, that they're just, like, hitting some sort of boundary and they're like, I guess I gotta turn around. Like, I'm just gonna, like, believe that, because otherwise it gets, like, real dark real fast if you're believing that, like, a bunch of planes and helicopters are falling out of the sky. Like, there's a bunch of helicopters in the city, like, monitoring traffic. Like, all of, like, the CBS, like...
helicopters.
Traffic helicopters would just be like plummeting down like with Al Roker inside. Like, it would not be good.
Well, B, obviously what would happen is the whole city would be on fire. It's like, just imagine like the one cow that's alive and not put to sleep accidentally hits an old lantern and just causes the Great Chicago Fire again.
Somehow, even though it's New York.
Yeah. Well, Chicago and New York, they're close, right?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Very, very
old
close,
Bessie
right next to each other.
Hits the lantern. Like everything about like the situation is just awful because all of these like solutions happen that are just worse. Like what about like, you know, obviously you have things like trains you have to worry about. You have to worry about boats coming into the New York harbor.
I mean, trains aren't so bad. At least they're on a track. They just stop.
Well, except when you fall asleep and the conductor and everyone's asleep, so there's no failsafe.
Yeah, I get. So it just keeps going like that scene in Polar Express.
No, B, it's not that scene in Polar Express. What is the movie? There's a movie, I think it's called Unstoppable. It has Chris Pine and Denzel Washington where they're supposed to stop a train because it has dangerous chemicals, but it's also connected to a train with kids on it.
Oh, yeah. What is that called?
It's called Unstoppable. That's what it's called.
Isn't there another movie very similar to that takes place on a bus?
It's called Speed.
Speed. Okay, that's what I thought.
B, that's Keanu in it, and also Sandra Bullock, And I always forget the name of the villain. The villain's from Waterworld. It's gonna come to me. Dennis Hopper. There we go. Dennis Hopper. Yeah. Why do I remember this stuff? This is just my brain working. But yeah, so pretty much like New York City should just be like a smoking crater. Like, you know what my biggest fear is, B, about like if there's ever like a zombie invasion or like people to stop existing in the world and I'm like a survivor?
Yeah, what is it?
I'm getting to the mountains because the scariest thing that you can possibly think about is who's monitoring all the nuclear power plants.
Oh, yeah, there's one pretty close to where I live, so that's nice to think about.
Yeah, like, B, gotta think about it. Like, who's monitoring those places? Because they can't be
Major
operated by
meltdown.
themselves. No, I'm
Yeah.
saying, like, if, like, people stop to exist...
Let's not try to, like, parse too much about what would happen if all of Manhattan was asleep. I mean, also, Manhattan's just one borough. There's, like, other stuff going on. Ideally, all the most important things are, like, being redirected.
Oh, yes, it's like Joaquin Phoenix just dancing down the stairs and talking about cow's milk.
Yeah, no, he's still fine, because that's in the Bronx.
That's in the Bronx, yeah. Oh, man. But everything about this is, like, it's gotten to the point where Percy Jackson now has to save Rachel before they become, like, a grease smear on the side of a pavement.
This is also, like, an interesting tense moment because then Annabeth is like, oh, geez, and kind of is, like, annoyed that she's there, but also understands that that's Percy's friend. She's like, oh, I guess we gotta go help Percy's friend.
What if a feeling is like, Percy, maybe we should weigh those odds for a second here. Do you really need Rachel right now?
Yeah, it's kind of complicated because Annabeth is, like, jealous, but she's not, like, cold-hearted. She wouldn't want, Rachel to spiral out and die. Like, that's a little bit extreme even for Annabeth's jealousy.
Well, B, here's the thing though. She didn't kill Rachel. Gravity did. It's not murder if it's an accident.
I guess so. Yeah. Then again, he also didn't really intend for mortals to be involved at all.
Yeah.
That was kind of her own business. She kind of volunteered to do that.
So B, what is the name of the next chapter?
The name of the next chapter is Chapter 16. We get help from a thief. Oh, geez. Okay.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
What's the oh, no, B?
Is it Ares?
Ooh, that might be a possibility, wouldn't it? That's actually a really good possibility.
Because he stole the lightning bolt?
But he wasn't the lightning thief, B. That was Luke.
That's true. It was Luke. Luke was the lightning thief. But that's complicated. They wouldn't get help from Luke because Luke is still Kronos.
Unless he, made, a video recording of himself because he knew what the future
here's
holds.
the thing, though. There's a lot of thieves. Hasn't it been established that, all of Hermes' cabin is a bunch of thieves?
Yeah.
So, it doesn't really narrow it down.
Well, I have a feeling there's, a bunch of, Dickensian orphans. That's, a pickpocketing gang.
Yeah, all of, the Artful Dodgers gang.
Yeah, exactly.
Be like, hello, Percy. I don't know why Dick Van Dyke is there. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm excited to see who this thief is, B. It's going to be very fun, very interesting. Who knows?
Yeah, this is escalating a lot. So we're on chapter 16 now. How many chapters are in this book?
22.
So we're getting there. We're getting in the home stretch a little bit.
I can't even fathom when we finish this book. What do we do?
I have no idea what's going to happen in the meantime. I mean, I feel like for the most part they're going to be successful, but along the way there's going to be a lot of misery. I just know there's going to be some suffering. There's going to be... Oh man. I feel like there's going to be at least one major character death. There's going to be some serious weird stuff happening with Luke that I don't even know. There's so much. There's so much to look forward to, and by look forward to, I mean dread. Isn't
that what keeps you up at night, this existential dread that we're almost done with all Percy Jackson?
Yeah. Also, I can't read ahead, so I just have to sit here and suffer, on a weekly basis.
I can laugh at this. Sorry, V. It's like going to a super fun fair and not being invited except for once a week.
I just, I have no idea what's going to happen, honestly. Not the specifics anyway. There's just, so many loose ends to tie up, and I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, we will figure it out, won't we? Next week is always another good week here on Radio Camp Half-Blood. So, B, you want to read some listener emails?
Yes, we did. We got a few emails this week. First one is from Carlin, who says, "Hi, Zack and B. It's Carlin. I sent another email, and I don't know if you got it. So here's another. I just want to say that you guys are so awesome. I've been listening to your podcast for a while now, and you guys are the best. Sincerely, Carlin. P.S. I'm going to make fan art soon. Heart emoji, smiley emoji. Oh, that's very nice. I love when we get fan art. That's like my favorite. I get very hype.
My favorite part is when we do get fan art because, like, for me, it pops up first, and it's always like opening up a Christmas present, and then immediately I send it to B, and we both like go, "Oh, it's great."
It's true. Then Zach gets the joy of sharing it with me, and I get to react. It's a great process. Obviously, because you're the one who mans our email.
One of these days, I feel like I'm going to print them all out, B, and we're going to make a collage so we can just have a couple of them.
Yeah, that would be really fun. It's sort of like I know some like YouTubers when they get fan art, they like make a collage as like their background, but we don't really do video content.
No, the video's in our heart, B. That's what everyone has to worry about.
Yeah, our podcasts are on YouTube, but they're just a picture of the thumbnail.
So, B, I have an email, and this is from Grain, Geryn, about Annabeth getting hurt. Hi, Zack and B. My name's Grain, and I really like your podcast. I distinctly remember being devastated over the character Chiron, since we have very similar names, and he sucked. Anyways, I have loved these books.
Oh, right. Chiron, right? Because he's like the evil guy in the labyrinth, right? Yes?
Yes.
Sorry, we've met so many characters with ancient Greek names, but I think that's the one.
He also sounds like a Power Ranger name. Chiron.
A little bit, yeah, you're right. After 10,000 years, I'm free.
I love Carla Perez. She's so great. I was 10 and was really excited when I found your podcast. I really like listening to both of you pick apart each chapter of each book. It makes me appreciate the series even more. I especially enjoy B's point of view as a new reader. Last episode, you guys were talking about the reasons why Annabeth took the hit for Percy. I always assumed that it was a part of the Curse of Achilles. In the Iliad, I'm going to butcher this name, so I apologize. Patroclus, Achilles' best friend and or boyfriend, is killed in battle while impersonating Achilles. It's because of this I think that the real Curse of Achilles is not just the extra effective weak spot, but losing someone you love, or at least the risk of it. Like Proclus, Annabeth got hurt taking a hit meant for someone who cares for her and happens to have the Curse of Achilles. Like you mentioned last episode, I think the fates have a hand in this, and that she had defended Percy so that she would get hurt. Yes, she has recovery, but I believe Annabeth was a higher chance of dying for Percy as long as he has the cursed trademark, especially since this isn't the only time she gets seriously injured trying to save him in these books. That's my theory anyway. Sorry if this is kind of rambling and long. Hope you have a good week and keep staying mortal. Oh, thank you.
That's a really good email. I didn't really think of that. I mean, again, my understanding of mythology is tenuous at best. But that is sort of an interesting theory that there's just sort of like more of a broader fate thing going on with the Curse of Achilles, where it's not just that you're destined to like get hurt in your vulnerable spot or whatever, but there's also like all this other interpersonal stuff with the people who love you. I don't know. That's kind of interesting.
Isn't that the thing about curses? Like sometimes you might be invincible, but your friends aren't.
Right, like something like that. Or like it's even like the sort of great power, great responsibility thing where it's like,
oh no, Uncle Ben,
you know,
no,
exactly.
Yeah,
you're destined to forever have something horrible happen to your loved one.
My favorite is when they said that Spider-Man might have to be rebooted again due to rights and stuff. It's like, oh no, Uncle Ben, here we go again.
Yeah, seriously.
It's been a long time since I've read the Iliad, but also it's been a long time since I've seen the movie Troy with Brad Pitt. So maybe I have to revisit both of those, because I feel like maybe that might be a good thing to have, because the Curse of Achilles is such an interesting superpower that we don't know what the full curse could be other than just you get stabbed and you die.
We got another email from Alexandra who says, "Hi guys, I love your show. I just want to say a couple things. First, when you talk about cringy romance, you forgot about Star Wars Attack of the Clones, and maybe Peter Parker fits in that category too. Also, please do Magnus Chase next. Ax Fierro is boss." And that's the end of the email.
Okay, so I'll talk about the Star Wars stuff really quickly. So when it comes to Star Wars prequel stuff, that is pretty cringy. I think it's fun to watch.
I don't think I've seen all of any prequel movie, at all.
I watch them because they're fun to watch with friends because they're really, really, really bad. If people want to,
Oh, I know. I'm aware.
if people want to fight me about this, I can easily talk about it. But when it comes to like the romance, like what George Lucas does, he's trying to do Romeo and Juliet, but it's so forced that it's almost comedic because every time they talk, either Padme's in like a sexy dress or like Anakin's talking about how he's murdered women and children, but yet she still falls in love with him. Womp womp. B, you know the reason why Padme can't fall in love with Anakin?
Oh, is there like a magic reason why?
No. Do you want to know?
Are they related?
No. Oh, no, not that.
Listen, that's happened before in Star Wars.
B, it's because she's a senator.
They can't have relationships?
She never elaborates, and the reason why Anakin can't fall in love with her is because he's a part of the creepy cult known as Jedi, who are loveless weirdos.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's kind of true, though, because they're sort of like, has no attachments or whatever, right?
They're supposed to not have attachments, but surprise, surprise.
Yeah, it's sort of like space Buddhism.
A little bit, but you get captured when you're a kid. You're forced against your will to train in the weird school.
So it's like VFD a little bit, honestly.
A little bit, yeah, exactly. When it comes to like Spider-Man and Peter Parker, I actually like Peter Parker's plight because when it comes to the comics, Peter Parker is an interesting character because he has so many different girlfriends, so you get different gambits of like what a relationship is. When you're talking about the movies, they're okay. The worst one though is The Amazing Spider-Man. Ooh. Gwen Stacy and Spider-Man. But Mary Jane, Kristen Dunst, and Tobey Maguire, love it. Great, except for the Spider-Man 3 when she does the twist with James Franco. What was the rest of that email? I'm so sorry, I just got distracted. I just disassociated.
It was about cringy romance. Was there another part to it? Hold on a sec.
No, there's we should read Magnus Chase next.
Oh, we should read Magnus Chase. We're probably doing
Heroes of Olympus next.
Heroes of Olympus. Yeah, that's seems to be the consensus. Again, we're doing a poll just in case so people have their say, but it's probably going to be Heroes of Olympus.
Most likely. And we might probably be changing up format a little bit, so just be ready for that if we do. So I have an email. B, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
So I got one from Liam, our good friend Liam. Hey, Zack and B, I'm back with another email concerning your question on Greek gods moving around different countries and the children's resulting from it. I think you're overlooking the fact that gods are super powerful beings that can probably teleport to any location at will, regardless of whether or not they're in the center of power is. So, who's to say that one Greek god could have been visiting England from America and some British children? Also, in one of the books, it says that the gods probably moved from America in the early 1700s along with Camp Half-Blood, which was originally in Greece, but moved with the gods. Anyways, thank you for doing this podcast and keeping it clean. I appreciate it. P.S. Zach, I recently watched The Fifth Element with my dad and enjoyed it a lot. I enjoy your movie references, especially the ones I get. I also have a movie/show recommendation for you. It's called Stargate. You should watch the movie first, then the show, which is on Hulu. Okay, I love Stargate. Actually, the movie not so much. The TV shows are awesome. Like Stargate Atlantis is probably one of my favorite shows.
So they kind of hit the nail on the head with that recommendation, huh?
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the rest of the email?
Oh, the rest of the email. So we always get distracted by this, but the rest.
We do.
So the beginning part of the email, B is kind of talking about how the gods probably moved around.
Right. Yes. Okay. So I guess I didn't really think about that. Like, obviously they could travel anywhere. I was more thinking of like, I guess, setting down roots somewhere. And like, for instance, like they say, oh, the Beatles are demigods and like they're British. So I guess it just didn't seem to make sense to me, but I don't know. I guess it's fine. I guess it makes sense. Nothing matters.
So my consensus, B, and this is just my opinion about this, is that I always had the consensus that the gods stayed in one fixed position, but then like let's say like another event happened, like the stock market crashed, so then the place moved to a different place that's their brightest, which would probably be England, even though it would probably be a different place, but I'm not going to bring that up.
I don't really know. I kind of like the point in the email, though, that you don't necessarily need to be in the quote-unquote, like, center of power for demigods to be born there, I guess. Because that just determines where Olympus is, basically.
And they kind of do bring up a point about this in this chapter with Dionysus being able to be apart from his body and still have a consciousness.
Right, exactly. So they could be all over the place. It's just, where certain locations are determined by where Western civilization is.
For me, it's kind of like just confusing because I'm also used to that consensus that they would be in one location because we only see them in the United States. Because I feel like demigods in like England or like Asia, it'd be really hard to go to the United States and find Camp Half-Blood unless it's like a Hogwarts situation where they get like a Camp Half-Blood
Yeah,
letter.
and then they get on like a magic boat that takes forever.
Yeah, so they may or may not be able to live because of all the scurvy and piracy.
And the hardtack full of bugs.
Abby, do we get any more emails?
Yeah, we have one more email from Isaac who says, "You guys are probably my favorite podcast, and I've been listening to you for almost a year now, and I love it so much. I want to know, what is your favorite book in the Rick Riordan universe and favorite character? Also, favorite book you've ever read. I love you guys so much, and how misdirected you get from the topic. Keep doing what you're doing and never change." I feel like we've answered some of these before. Favorite book in the Rick Riordan universe. Well, I've only read, like, basically this series and then also the Demigod Files. So,
well, I think I'll go first then. For me, it's The Titan's Curse. I think that's such a perfectly paced book that it's actually a lot of fun to read. It also has one of my favorite characters in it. You have Thalia, and you have a lot of interesting decisions.
Yeah, that might be my favorite too, honestly. I'm liking this one a lot too. It's a little bit darker, though, so I don't know. I mean, like, I guess I just really like The Lightning Thief, too. It's complicated, because it depends on, like, what you want out of it. It's sort of very comparable to, like, the Harry Potter thing, where it's, like, the early books, you feel, like, a little bit more cozy, and you're, like, situated in this new setting and being introduced to this new world, and because Percy's, like, the sort of, like, audience surrogate character, you get to experience, like, oh, and these are demigods, and this is Camp Half-Blood, and this is your camp, and all that stuff is really exciting, but then the character development stuff is really interesting in the later books, so it's kind of hard for me to pick.
Oh, yeah, there's actually a split when J.K. Rowling's like, I'm gonna ruin everyone's day.
Yeah, that's kind of like what this series does too. It's also like the YA thing of like, you start off more innocent and then like things get more intense, the stakes get higher, there's loss of innocence, the characters get older, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I don't know, I think Titan's Curse might be my favorite as well, just because it's like a nice balance between the two, where you still feel like there's like that comfort of Camp Half-Blood, but you haven't quite gotten to like the, oh no, the apocalypse is happening any second now kind of feeling that you get with this book.
Nebby, what's your favorite book? I think it's also Percy Jackson book, but also
favorite book. Jeez.
I'm gonna take a guess. Let me guess. Is it Matilda?
No, actually, I mean, that's like one of my favorite books, probably. That's definitely one of my favorite Roald Dahl books. I mean, I really like To Kill a Mockingbird, though there's something to be said about analysis for that and how it maybe isn't like the best politics now. It hasn't maybe aged the best. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other books that I love. I mean, I really like memoir, too. Speaking of Matilda, I actually really like Mara Wilson's memoir a lot. That's one of my favorites.
Where I Am Now?
Oh, yeah, Where I Am Now. Yeah, that one's really great.
I would love to meet Mara Wilson. Mara Wilson, if you ever want to come on the show, we'd love to have you on.
Yeah, that's like a really good. I like a lot of memoir, honestly. Oh, what is that one by Julia Sweeney? If It's Not One Thing, It's Your Mother. That's like she has like the audiobook is great, actually. If you can get the audiobook, because her delivery is hilarious and she just cracks me up. Really, it's weirdly, I talk a lot about like YA and fiction, but I read a lot of memoir.
Now, for me, if we're going to talk about memoirs, for me, my favorite memoir book is actually The Disaster Artist by Greg Cicero and Tom Bissell.
Yeah, I was actually just looking that on my shelf when I was thinking of what book to say. But the thing is, I think the content of that book is really interesting. I don't love the writing style as much. I think it could be like a little bit more interesting.
Well, you have to listen to the audiobook. Greg Cicero does, and he does a spot-on Tommy Wiseau impression.
Yeah, maybe the audiobook might be better, because I didn't find because I guess he didn't really have a ghostwriter, but he had like a co-writer. And so
Tom Bissell, I actually got to meet him at a Gears of War party, because he also wrote Gears 5. It was great. He's a nice guy. I love that guy. Tom, if you ever want to come on the show or talk about creating a narrative, I'd love to have you on, man.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel as much of like a direct, like him writing down what happened, like, because there's like that surrogate of someone else writing with him. So I don't know. I do really like the story, though. It's fascinating.
And then obviously my favorite book of all time, B, what is it? You probably know. I've talked about it a billion times.
Is it Ray Bradbury of some variety?
Close. It's The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, but The runner-up B is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury.
Okay, so I was close.
You're close. You got my Ray Bradbury man crushing, so that's good. Thank you. Oh man, this is so exciting. We did get one Apple Podcast review this week, and I will read it right now. This one's from $HI money sign. Hi, Zack and B. You guys are super funny and make my day. I'm turning 12 when I am on House of Hades, which is super ironic, so made it to Percy Jackson themed. Anyways, I recommend you to my class and go to person to become your super fan. It was This Name is Taken 24. I always try to fight and get my teacher to let me listen to you because you're an educational podcast. Sorry for the, oh wait, I shouldn't be sorry. Well, I have a good day and keep staying mortal. I like that we're an educational podcast is A-okay to be put onto loudspeakers of a classroom. I think we've made it be. We've made it.
I feel like this
hard.
has come full circle because I definitely used to listen to the Gothic Archie's songs from Unfortunate Events.
First album.
Yeah,
I did that too
during my independent reading, and I would be like, "It's sort of educational. It's related to books," and then my teacher was like, "It's okay. Just when someone walks in, tell them that's what you're doing. You're listening to a book." So it really has come full circle here.
Ooh, for me, this is old podcasting stuff because I started listening to podcasts probably 2008. I used to listen to this Team Fortress 2 podcast called Control Point. They're defunct now. But I used to listen to them religiously and then a couple other podcasts. And that's what I would listen to because they're educational because I wanted to kick butt in Team Fortress 2. 2008 was such a simpler time. But it's crazy. We have these fans that are super fans but also love us, but also people want to listen to us at school. This is kind of the theme, isn't it, B? That people want to listen to us at school.
Yeah, if you listen to us in class and get in trouble, then you didn't see anything.
We're not responsible.
Yeah, we're not liable for any detention you get.
And if you're the teacher listening to this right now, give this person some extra credit.
Yeah, no, they're learning, sort of, about Star Wars. Mainly.
They learned about the jellyfish jam today.
That's true.
Fun. Yes, it is. And Star Wars. I can talk about Star Wars all day, every day. So if you want to talk about trade disputes and the Galactic Senate and the Trade Federation, I've already put them to sleep, B. We should get going. Person listening to this podcast, run. So, B, where can they find you on the social medias?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com.
And if you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Suda41. That's SUDA41. If you want to follow our show on Twitter, that's at halfblood_radio. If you want to email the show, you can email us at radiocamphapblood@gmail.com. We have a patreon.com/radiocamphapblood. We have t-shirts available at TeePublic, so go to www.teepublic.com. Well, guys, I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And let's keep staying mortal, guys. See ya!
Bye.